So some of us have reached out to me about how joining the sessions consumes a lot of bandwidth from your side. So I decided to not turn on my video, but I'm going to start to turn on my video. So what you guys can do is that you can turn off the incoming video from your side. So you would still be able to see you'd still be able to see the screen I'm sharing, but when you use this feature of turning off the video, like turn off the incoming video from your side, then you do not need to see my face. So my video is going to be on, but then you do not need to consume it. So there's a link that would show you how to get this done. So I'm just going to put that link um inside the resources channel so that those of us who have bandwidth issues, especially, we can turn it off and then still be able to go through the class as normal. And the second thing too is that we've gotten to the we're getting to the end of the program. And so we're going to have another feedback session. So hopefully we can use this week to complete that. Today is Tuesday, so we have 4 days to get that done. So I think the earlier timetable can still work. The one that we had inside the groupings, Excel sheet. I think that timetable still works. I'll just make a copy of it, and then you would know the day that you are going to meet with me. So Monday, Wednesday, Thursday. Okay, so I'm changing Monday to Tuesday, which is today's date. 30th July. And it would be today we're closing at 11. So we can have today's feedback session, or we can start today's feedback session at let's do 11:30 because class this morning is going to end at 11. So you guys have 30 minutes to get a short break and then just reflect on how the program has gone so far. If there are any issues that you're facing that you'd like me to know about, if especially with the first week when we spoke about what's it called? Our expectations of the program. So if your expectations have been met, what could we improve? All of those things. So you can take 30 minutes to actually go through, like reflect and then think about them. And then we meet again at 11:30. It's just going to be like how the last time's on was, like a maximum of 3 minutes, 4 minutes. I would be done with each person. So we have the Excel sheet, so we can know which day that we are supposed to come. So for today, Enam, Osman, William, Odum, Teresa, Terry, Richmond, Ruben, Emmanuel Awuku, Penty, and Emmanuel Mensah Janin. Beaches.
Hi, Aposina. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Please, may I know the exact week that we'll be taking the exam?
The exact week. So
Yeah.
we have let me pull up the calendar.
Okay.
So you're going to be taking the exam in batches. And so from next week, which is 5th August, we are going to be having the exam prep. So that will go on for about 2 weeks. So you can look at 12 and 12 to like the week of 12 and then the 19th week too. So those 2 weeks, over those two
Okay.
weeks, everybody would have written.
Okay.
So like 12 to 23rd of August.
Okay. And do we get to decide when we want to take it, or is it going to be a scheduled thing?
Yeah, so we would book for you and then we would let you know about the date and then the time. But if I book or I suggest a date and time that you can't make it, you can just let me know. And well, we just have 2 weeks, so it would definitely have to be between that 2 weeks window. If you cannot take it within that 2 weeks, then you would have to probably take it on your own or buy your own voucher or something like that. So it's just between those 2 weeks. But if you have a desired time that you might want, then you just inform me early and then I would put you up for that date.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. And please, the names on Canvas, some of us have still not changed their names on Canvas. Please, let's do that. Jennifer, Janin, Derek Pia, Theresa, Richmond Amoa. So yesterday I took a look and you guys and then some other guys too have not yet changed their names. Okay, and some of you have showed me your projects that you've been building so far, and I just wanted to commend you guys and also inform you that you're not restricted to Medium. You can look on YouTube to get you more ways or ways that will work for you. So I know some people who documented their projects with YouTube videos. I know people who have like their whole project in GitHub. So the readme.md file and then they do all of their writing there. So if writing on Medium doesn't work for you, um you can actually talk about your project and then you can use YouTube to document a video of how you built the project. That's 2x. As long as you're doing something that can showcase that you have the skill and then you are really knowledgeable in the AWS cloud engineering field. Yakubu,
Professor, good morning.
good morning.
So on my dashboard, it shows I have 4 pending cases, but I have not received any email with regards to the cases that are missing, and I've searched I searched the canvas, and it's only one case that I have not done. I completed my cases this morning, and is I think only one that I have not done. So
Okay, so if you haven't if your dashboard is saying you have 4 pending cases, I'm guessing it's from that issue that we discovered last week that I informed Francis about. So some of the topics were
okay.
treated in like the next week. So I think that's the problem that is kind of like reflecting. Yeah. So don't worry
All right, thank
about
you.
it. You're welcome. Derek Apia,
Good morning, please.
good morning.
I heard you mention my name about not changing my name on Slack, so I'm a little confused about it.
Okay, so when you go to your Slack, no, not Slack, sorry, Canvas. When you go to your Canvas, the part of your Canvas that has your name right now is your email that is there. Derek, is that okay?
Uh,
Yeah, so please
yes.
change from your email to your name.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Right. Let's recap what we came across yesterday. Dennis.
Yeah, so yesterday we treated one of the things we treated is Amazon Athena, and we I learned that Athena is a data analysis service or tool that you can configure with S3 to query and perform some form of analysis on data that is stored in S3, and said that some of the data you can perform queries on is CloudTrail logs, VPC flow logs, and there's one other log. So yeah, some logs, and then you can also store data in S3 and perform queries on S3. And also you don't need to load the data or extract or transform data within Athena. Once you point it to S3, you can directly start making your queries with SQL. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Dennis. We looked at Amazon Athena yesterday, and then we mentioned that you can use Athena to run SQL queries. The way we had been running queries in the past inside of our workbench, that is the same way that Athena 2 works. So we also watched the demo of how Marek he ran the create database query, and then he inserted some data all from the Athena console, and then he was able to run queries on that data that he had. And we also took a look at CloudTrail log. So we looked at one CloudTrail log, and then taking note of the parameters or the keys that are logged inside that CloudTrail log. We're able to tell that there are some queries that we can run, some select statements using the where clause, using the group by clause, just like how we did in Workbench. We can run some queries on log files, and then it would be able to get us some insights, able to get us some information, some meaningful information from all of that log data that we are collecting. So apart from the CloudTrail logs, we can also use Athena to run queries on logs that are elastic load balancer is collecting, and then our VPC flow logs too. So we know the kind of traffic, the source that the traffic came from, the ports that the traffic came through, all of those things, we can analyze them with SQL when we use Athena to query them. And it's usually log data or data stored in S3 that Athena is used to query. Okay, Gifty.
Okay, good morning.
Morning.
Please, yesterday I also remember we spoke about tagging. Yes, so even before yesterday, we've heard tagging or we've seen something about tagging in class and during labs. So yesterday I also saw that tagging is like adding a descriptive label to your instance, or any other AWS resource that is able to take tags, like you add additional information or a metadata to your resource, which can help you to probably search for the specific resource that it enables you to look for it. You can search by the resource name, resource ID, those things, or you can use the key and then the value that you used for as or used as the tag parameters you can use to search for the resource here. And then it enables you to categorize your resources, especially when you have like a lot of resources. You've created a lot of resources. By tagging them, you are kind of grouping them in some specific order according to what you want. Yeah. So I think Enam gave us an explanation of how he sees or thinks tag works like in real life. Yeah. Yeah, that's what I remember about tagging. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Gifty. We looked at tagging, and then we mentioned that we use that to identify or categorize resources so that it's easy for us to distinguish them. So various resources that we provision in AWS, any web service, even your security groups, any resource that you're going to provision in AWS, you might want to tag them so that whenever you have any functions that you want them to do. So a typical example we looked at was when you have certain instances that you don't need them to be running all the time. So you can write a script that would stop and start those instances. And how do you recognize those instances? By the tag that you have assigned to them. And I also mentioned that naming is also a way of tagging. So when you give your resource a name, it can have the key being name, and then the value is going to be whatever name that you specified. So I showed as an example when creating an EC2 instance, you might want to tag to for various departments. You might want to tag for any logical reason or that helps you to distinguish your resources. Then you might want to utilize tags for that. So sometimes it's just your maybe the company is a startup and you don't really have a lot of departments or you don't really have a lot of resources, but it's just still good to implement tagging so that when you start to go, it's not going to be like a whole issue, because it would be easier for you to keep track and to distinguish between the various resources inside your account. So yesterday we mentioned 2 ways that we can enforce tagging inside AWS. So we looked at 2 services which we've seen before, and we looked at how those 2 services specifically can be used to enforce tagging inside of our AWS account. Does anybody remember those 2 services? Or if you remember one too, you can say it. Beatrice, do you remember the 2 services?
No, I was going to speak on something else.
Okay, then let me get back to you. Yakubu, I guess you raised your hand for the 2 services.
Yeah, I remember just one.
Okay, go ahead.
AWS config.
Okay. Thank you, Yakubu.
So,
Okay,
yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah, so we said that the config helps to track changes. So then we can also specify config rules in order to enforce tagging on resources. And then they also mentioned something like non-compliance, so that if you create a resource and then in AWS config you mention that like the resource should be in a certain way, and then a user does not do it that way, then AWS config will mark that as non-compliant. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Yakubu. So yeah, config was one of the services that we mentioned, and I mentioned that config tracks your configurations. It tracks changes. So if you've provisioned any resources prior to setting up your config rules, as soon as you set up your config rules, it's going to flag or it's going to show all those resources that are non-compliant. And when we mention non-compliant, we mean that the config rule that you have just set, those resources that do not obey those rules. Okay, so we looked at the required tag rule, and it's an AWS provided rule that you can use to enforce tags when it comes to config. So any of your resources that do not have tags, config is going to flag them as non-compliant. But then I also mentioned that config would not be able to stop them from creating those resources without tags. Config will just let them go ahead with it, and then it will just flag that this is non-compliant. So if we want a service that is actually going to stop them from creating resources without tags, which service would we use? Gifty. John Harold.
Madam Akusia, AWS, I am service.
Thank you, John. So yeah, to stop them from going ahead with it, you can use an IAM policy. So you set a condition that this user or this policy should only allow a resource to be created if the resource has a tag. You can specify the tag that you want, or you can just specify that it should have a tag. So if that condition is met, then the user or the role or the whoever would be allowed to create the resource. If that condition is not met, then you get that red permission denied response that comes to us whenever we try to do something that we do not have permissions for. Okay. Beatrice, I think you can come in with what you wanted to say now.
Okay, so I just wanted to add on to what Dennis said earlier about Athena. I wanted to say that Athena is an out of the box service in that it's fully managed by AWS. So you do not have to set up any infrastructure or anything. You can just run your SQL queries and then you're good to go. And that with Athena, you only pay for what you use or the queries that you run as well. Yes.
All right. Thank you, Beatrice. So yeah, Athena is serverless in that you do not need to provision any resources. Yesterday we saw how in the video all he did was to run the query to create the database. He inserted his values and then he just went ahead to run the queries. So Athena is much more, you have less to configure, and it is also cost effective in the sense that even though the data that you have is being stored on S3 or is there's definitely a server somewhere that is hosting and making it possible for you to run those queries. You do not pay for that. You only pay strictly for the queries that you run. So if you do not make any queries, then you do not pay any money when you use Athena. And we can compare that to something like RDS, where you pay for the time that your instances, your database instance is running and all of those things. But with Athena, you just pay for the queries that you are making. Okay. John Albert in pink.
Sorry.
Gifty, I'll come to you shortly.
Okay.
Yeah, good morning, Madam Akosia.
Good morning, John.
Yes. So yesterday I also learned about organization, AWS organization. And I learned that it is the centralized way of managing multiple AWS accounts. And then you are also able to use it to consolidate your AWS bill so that you have a bigger leverage on what you are going to pay for all various accounts, so that it wouldn't become little bits of invoices per every account, but you can group it together under the organization. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, John. Yesterday we looked at some AWS organizations, and then we saw that you can centrally manage various AWS accounts by having them under one management account, which is also called the root. Okay, so as long as they are under that management account, you will be able to consolidate your billing. So the various bills that they are accruing in their various accounts, you would be able to have all of them be charged to the management account. And we also looked at SCPs. We said that they are similar to IAM policies, just that SCPs work at the account level. So if you attach an SCP to an organizational units are the containers that contain these accounts that you're managing, and organizational units too can be nested in the sense that you have OUs within OUs. So if you attach the policies to any OUs or any individual accounts, then that is going to count towards their ability to perform some function in AWS. So inside S3, inside EC2, what can they do? What can they not do? All of those things, allow or deny. You can use SCPs to centrally manage all of those things. And another benefit or a reason why people use organizations a lot is because of consolidated billing. So you know that in AWS, the more you use, the less you pay. So when they're able to pool their usage or their cost like that, then they get more benefits when it comes to those cost savings that AWS does. When it comes to reserved instances, savings plans, all of those things, they will be able to enjoy them across accounts just because they all belong to the same management account. Okay, so I believe those are the 3 topics that we looked at yesterday. And if there are any questions from yesterday's session, let's kindly ask them before we move on to what we have to do for today.
Yeah, good morning, Akosia.
Good morning, Gifty.
Oh, please, sorry. Initially, I raised my hand to answer a question, but I left my phone, so when you were calling me, I wasn't around. But please, yesterday, I remember that when we mentioned tagging, okay, that every tag has a key and then a value. And I'm
That's true.
yeah, that's true. Yeah. So how is that one? Sometimes it confuses me with another thing, the key value pair thing, that when creating like an EC2 instance, like you need the like private key, public key thing that we download. That I mean,
Oh, okay, the key
I
pair.
get the yes.
Oh, okay. So the key pair is let me share my screen and log on to my console. No, not this one. Come on. So what the key pair is more of a security feature. Okay, it's a way for AWS to authenticate you when you are no, sorry, to authorize you when you are logging into your instance. So when we look at the SSH command, we mention our IP address, we mention SSH-I. So the -I means we are going to follow it up with an identity key. And what that identity key does is that it tells AWS that you are the authorized person that should be let into the instance. So your key pair should not get into the wrong hands, because that is the way that AWS authorizes that you can connect to the instance via SSH. And we call it a pair because we have the private key and then AWS has the public key. So when AWS compares theirs to ours, then it will do that, okay, this is the person coming with this key is actually authorized to get into the instance. So you would need a key pair when you are trying to SSH into your server. But when it comes to tagging, that's can be used for any resource, and it's not just limited to instances and then SSH. I hope that difference makes it better for you.
Okay, yeah. And then these two commands, or again, AWS configure and AWS config.
Okay, so you run AWS configure when you want to set up your AWS CLI. So before you can start, after you install your AWS CLI on your local machine or on your instance, before you can start to run AWS commands, you need to authenticate yourself. So if it had been the console, then you go with your username and then your password. But because you're going through the CLI, you would now need to work with your access keys. So you can go to the console. You can even, okay, well, you haven't yet configured your CLI. So you go to the console and then you select the user and then you create access and then secret key for the user. So when you run AWS configure, it will ask you for those access and secret keys. And that's how it knows that it is you, because nobody else should have access to your access and secret keys. So you can have multiple users inside one account. And then the only way that we can distinguish which user exactly is making some is provisioning some resources or is making some changes is by that access and user key. So that's how they know that you are the user that is using the CLI. That's what AWS configure does.
Okay.
And then
Okay.
AWS config is a service that you use to manage and yes, you use to manage your configurations. So the configurations or the setup of your various resources, you use config to keep track of them. You can also enforce config rules so that it would show you the resources that are not compliant according to your rules. Is that okay?
Yes. Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so last week Group 3 helped us with cost management and best practices. So this morning we'll just have a quick run through or kind of like a repetition of some of the services and features that we saw last week. Okay, so how do we understand cost management? Managing of our costs. Or what are some activities that might come to mind when you think of cost management?
Good morning, Akusia.
Good morning, Auku.
Yeah, so an activity we can do is to draw a budget, right?
Yeah. Thank you, Auku.
You're welcome.
So just like how okay, Dennis.
Hello, Madam Akusia.
Hi, John.
Okay, so I was also going to say that one of the activities is to do a use the cost calculator to actually have an overview of the costs that you incur by provisioning the resources that you intend to provision in your account and environment before you even start. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you, John. So just like the way in our normal day-to-day, we have some activities related to our costs. You might want to budget some like draw a plan or a budget for some part of your money. When you realize that you've spent a lot of money, you might want to go back and then I think was it Daniel that mentioned this last week. He realized he was spending a lot of money and then he kind of had a like reflected on his past expenses, trying to figure out where this money went, what she did with that. All those things relate to cost management. And it's kind of the same idea when you also come to the AWS cloud. So today we are going to again be looking at those tools and services that AWS provides that we can use to manage our cost. Osman.
Hello, brother.
Please, I drawing on my screen.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, so we're looking at some avenues or opportunities that we can use to save on costs. So we know that inside of AWS, the pricing model that is used is the pay as you go. So you only pay while you are using the service. If the service is not in use or the resources are not running, then you don't pay. Now, how would AWS know if you are using a resource or not? You are going to have to shut them down and then start them. That's the only way they're going to know. Because if you provision a resource and then, so for instance, provision an instance and you don't have any traffic coming into the instance, AWS will not be able to tell that this instance is not being used. You need to shut it down, and then that's way AWS knows that they are not going to bill you for that instance. So this is one way that you can help to save costs inside of your AWS environment. So if you have some services that you use during business hours, whenever it's after business hours or holidays or weekends, you do not need to have those services running, okay? So an example would be the cafe. Probably they operate from morning till about, let's say, 10 p.m. So after 10 p.m., there's not any good reason why all their infrastructure should be running, especially when orders and stuff are not going to come, are not coming in. Probably they can just go for a simple static website that says, sorry, we are closed, try again in the morning or something like that. So you should be mechanically sympathetic. You should use the resources for the exact function that you are trying to use them for. So don't over provision. Okay. And then you can also have you can also turn off disaster recovery environments. So you have a backup environment so that if anything should happen to your initial environments, you can fall back on that. I don't know if we've looked at There are four disaster recovery ways, pilot lights, those things. Do you guys remember anything like that? I think we did in the
Don't
first week. Pardon?
I don't think you have done it.
Okay. Okay. So when it comes to planning for disaster, there are 4 ways that you can do this. Okay, I just remembered. We have. So the week that we did
Good.
the week that we did the calculations, the disaster recovery, oh, I'm forgetting it. That we had to do calculations on points, recovery point objective and RTO. Nobody remembers anything like that.
Yeah, I remember we
Of course,
took
I
it.
remember.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the disaster recovery methods that we have, we looked at backup and restore. We looked at pilot lights, warm standby, and then multi-site. And we mentioned how multi-site is the most expensive because when you keep multi-sites, you are keeping an active setup. So you have a backup environment so that if anything happens to your main environment, you can fail over to that backup environment. So that active setup is quite expensive. And then I mentioned that some businesses cannot afford to have downtime. If like with every second or every minute that passes by that they do not operate, they lose so much money, and it could even get so critical that maybe lives could even be lost if some businesses go have any downtime. So in a business like that, you would want to go for something active, though it's expensive, but you just cannot afford to not go that route. And so a way to reduce your costs when it comes to your disaster recovery environments is to have an active passive setup. So you have a setup that is not as robust as the active one, but whenever any disaster should happen to the active one, you would be able to fail over to that setup. And then within a few minutes, you'll be able to have that your backup setup be able to serve your clients. So when you're looking at disaster recovery environments, if your business is not that critical, you can save money by using this active passive setup, because in the passive setup you would be charged less as compared to you having an active setup. And you can also make use of tagging to identify some instances that are not in use when it's after business hours. So you would run a script, or you would configure them in a way that they get started or they get stopped depending on some event. And what's this event? The event is the time that you open or the time that you close, those things. Please, do we understand?
Yeah.
Okay. So these are some tools and services that we can use to manage our cost in AWS. The first is the billing dashboard. So usually when we go to our console home, you can already see some information about our cost and usage here. And when you go to the billing and cost management service, you are currently looking at your billing dashboard. And what's this billing dashboard does for us is that we are able to see the overall status of our cost and usage. So this is a summary of whatever information that our billing dashboard has for us. If we want to see a specific bill for the month, we can click on bills. And then bills would let us know for the billing period. So we're in July. So from July 1st to July 31st, we look at that data, we'll be able to go back to June, you could go back to May, any of those things, so that you can have some insights into your bills or the cost that you are incurring. So the billing dashboard is where you go to access your monthly bill and even the bills that came the month before that month. We also have Cost Explorer, and what's Cost Explorer helps for us to do is that it helps us to understand and then visualize and manage our AWS costs over time. And it would be able to predict our future costs based on our current costs. So I mentioned before that when you go to your console home, that's current, and then what's it called? Your current cost and then your future costs. That's Cost Explorer doing its job. So when you think of, or whenever you meet anything that is asking you about Cost Explorer, this your console home should just come to mind. Whenever you open your console home, this is the work of Cost Explorer, your current month costs, and then based on that, it will also forecast your cost to the end of the month. So it's just working to forecast your month end cost based on your current cost and then some patterns that it has noticed. So that is the job of Cost Explorer. So we also have AWS budgets, which we can use to set custom budgets for ourselves. So you'll be able to receive an alert when your cost usage has exceeded some threshold. And last week, Dennis's group took us to the budgets console, and then they helped us to set a budget. So you'd specify, to create a budget, you'd specify the kind of budget that you want. If you want to specify more detail, then you go for this. But then the budget service is one of those services that are really user beginner friendly and easy to configure. So when you click on simplified, will be able to help you go through. So this would usually be used for those of us within the free tier who are new to AWS. We would want to use this because we are making sure that we do not incur any cost. And sometimes to inside of the company, the amount of money. So for example, we have a testing team, and then they have some tests to run. So the amount of money that we are allocating to that research project that the testing team is doing is probably $500. So we would want to configure a monthly cost budget so that when they are approaching that amount, they would be notified. Then they know that they need to be careful, or maybe they need to look at getting more funding for the research or anything that they need to do. So these are some type of budgets that you can set, and then inside of the budgets you will specify the email address that you want to receive that alert on. So those of us who have been exploring in the console, I'm sure some of us have received an alert when we've used 85% of our free tier, maybe some resource in the free tier. So I remember asking you guys to go and delete the EBS volume that was 30 gig, because that is you might receive an alert for that, because that is even more than 80% of the allocated free EBS storage that you get as part of the free tier. So that's what budgets to help us to be able to do. It would help us to keep track of our spend so that when we are approaching a threshold that we've set, it would alert us, and then whatever we need to do from there, we would do it. And there's also Amazon CloudWatch, which you can also use to monitor your usage charges, and it can also alert you when you reach a specific threshold. So when do we use budgets and when do we use CloudWatch? So budgets allow for you to have a more simplified, it's even more beginner friendly as compared to CloudWatch. So CloudWatch, well, both of them serve the same function, but CloudWatch would be used for when you have more experience or you want a more detailed kind of configuration. So so we've seen how it's done in budgets. So let's look at how it's also done in CloudWatch. Okay, so under alarms, you click on billing, and then you'll be able to create an alarm. So you'd also specify those parameters similar to that. And an extra feature that CloudWatch gives you is anomaly detection. So probably every month your company spends about $500. If it goes over, or if one of the resources is making or incurring more charges than normal, then an alarm would be blown. So you have more configurations to make when it comes to between CloudWatch alarms and then AWS budgets, but then both of them also work the same way. Then you also configure some actions that should take place whenever the metric is breached. So you select an SNS topic, and so for this to work, you can create a new SNS topic, or you select an SNS topic. When we talk about an SNS topic, it's just a heading or a group of like a topic. So if this is happening, then it should send some notifications to some people. So probably if this group of people have been accepted into a program, then it should send that it should send a notification to them. So we can see that with CloudWatch, you would have to rely on or configure other AWS services like the SNS topic, for example. But then with budgets, it was quite straightforward. All we had to do was provision provide our email, and then also mention how much money that it should be looking out for us for. And so I think we later go more detail in the next slides to come. So this is an example billing dashboard. You can see how your spend has been put into visualizations that you can use to get some meaning out of what you're looking at. So these kind of graphs and charts and stuff, you would be able to get to see them when you go to the billing dashboard. So we can see the various services we use and then how much money those services incurred. So this is just a visualization of some of the spend or all of the spend that you have incurred in a particular month. And as I mentioned, is the work of Cost Explorer to provide us with these. And when you go to the billing and cost management dashboard, and then you click on bills over here, that is when you would see this. you can see the exact service and then how much you incurred for that service. They can also be grouped by regions sometimes. So I think we've done cost investigations in this class before. So we'll see the region, we'll see how much is being spent in each region, which service is taking up that money. So let me look at one of my bills. Yeah, this is what I'm talking about. So EC2, you click on it, and then you can see that in the Stockholm region, $6, Virginia region, Oregon. So more details about your spend, you can find them on this bills that you can find on the left navigation pane. And we also have Cost Explorer, which I mentioned is responsible for the cost that you've incurred so far, and then you can also predict your next 12-month cost or your by the end of the month, the cost that you would have. And we've also mentioned AWS budgets, where you can set an amount that budget should look out for, and it would email you whenever you cross that threshold. And there are also cost and usage reports. So you probably have a need to show your cost reports to people who do not have AWS accounts. So for example, your finance person might want to look at it, or you just want to keep a copy of those records. You will be able to export this cost and usage reports so that you can provide it to whichever person that might be interested in the details about the cost you are incurring in AWS. So we can see the service, the usage type, the operations that you performed, the availability zone, usage amounts, the currency, and then how much money that's was spent when it came to this requests that you made. We've also looked at the CloudWatch billing alarms, and I mentioned that it works just like AWS budgets, but you will just have to configure, you have to integrate it with SNS so that you can send, so with AWS budgets, it's just emails, but when you use CloudWatch billing alarms and you integrate with SNS, you can send text messages and you can also send email notifications. So your choice between CloudWatch and billing alarms is really up to you. And you have to create the billing alarm inside US East 1 because that is the central storage for all billing metrics. So you might want to receive a notification about the spend in certain resources so that you can probably ask for an increase in budgets, or you might want to downgrade to less performance instances, all of those things. So these are some reasons why you would want to be alerted when your bills are getting to an amount. So last week there was a question about AWS budgets. What happens when you exceed the threshold? So in budgets, you get the email, but in CloudWatch, the alarm is triggered. So your metric goes into alarm state, and then you also get whatever recipients that you've configured on your SNS topic. So this is another way to help reduce costs in AWS. Please give me about 3 minutes. I'll be right back.
Okay.
Richmond, when I get back, I'll answer your question.
Okay.
Hello, Penti, are you on the call? DJ. Penti.
Yeah, Dennis, I'm here.
The ChatGPT thing you said. When I try it still just gives the same steps, so doesn't summarize because I wanted to find out what query did you use to do your own.
Okay, you after class today, we will try to do it.
Okay, all right.
Okay, I'm back. So we're talking about um the bills in AWS, and Richmond is asking about if he's billed when he uses S3 to host a static website. So inside S3, you pay for the storage. So the amount of storage that your files are consuming, so your CSS, your index.html, the images, you pay for that, and then you also pay for GET requests that are made to your website. So the number of requests or the number of people who are making requests to your website, those who are accessing it. But because you guys are within the free tier, you are allowed, I think, 10,000 guest requests. I'm not so sure. And then for the storage too, you are allowed an amount of storage for free because you're within the free tier. So right now, I don't think any of you are being billed for hosting a static website in S3, unless the files that you have there are more than, I think it's 5 gig or 1 gig. I'm not so sure. Richmond, is that okay?
Yes, okay. It's okay.
Okay. And I think you're part of those who haven't changed their names in Canvas? Or you've done that now?
No, no, please, you are not part of them.
You're not part of them.
Yes, please. I use the same email, the same everything.
So right now it's your email that is there. So I want you to change it to your name. Okay.
Then I'll do that.
Okay. Thank you, Richmond. Also answer.
Okay, please, I want to know. So, while you are still hosting your static website in your S3 bucket, probably with some other files you are hosting there, you have in your S3 bucket, you are still within the free tier. So, what if the free tier period is over? Does it mean you like they will start billing you for it, even though you are
Yes.
still within your 5 gig storage free tier?
Yes, to start billing you for it. So the amount of retail storage is per month. So after those 12 months are over, they'll stop giving you that free 5 gig per month. So you'd have to start paying for it.
Well, I hope you heard it. Let me
Unless
go and take my.
unless it's an always free service. So we have always free, we have always free, we have 12 months free, and then we also have free trials. So S3. Okay, it's even here. Yeah, so it's 12 months free. And after the 12 months, you start to get billed for it. So you have 5 gig of standard storage. You have 20,000 get requests. So 20,000 can access your files. Yeah. And then you won't be charged for it. And then you also have 2,000 put requests. So put requests are the files that you upload. So for 12 months, you have these for free. After that, they start to charge you for it. Derek, is that okay?
Well noted.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So these are additional ways that you can reduce your costs inside AWS. We've looked at budgets.
Hello, madam.
Yes, Osman.
Madam, with regard to the number of requests to your objects in the S3. So assuming, is it that only one particular S3 bucket or combined? Maybe let's say I have 2 buckets and the other one I have maybe 10,000 requests and the other one I have 10,000 requests. Does that mean that they are going to start billing me?
Yes, it's combined.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Another way to reduce your cost in AWS is to right-size your instances. So do not over provision. You, for instance, don't have a lot of traffic coming in yet. It's okay to go for an instance that is cheaper or that has a lower cost as compared to a more sophisticated or a more performant instance. So a typical example they've given here is between the T2 and then the T3 micro. So a personal example that we've all had is that whenever we are working on an assignment or we're experimenting with something, we go for T2 micro and it's able to work fine because you and I are not really expecting any traffic, like a lot of traffic anyway. Okay, so if you are also experimenting or you want to build a project and then you go for something maybe something from the M family, then you are over provisioning and then you are incurring costs that you do not need to incur. So you should always make sure that you are choosing the right instance type and you are also choosing the right volume size. So with the first week, the assignments that we did, the YouTube video asks that you provision a 30 gig EBS volume, but we're really not going to have any, like we're not going to keep anything on that volume, on that instance. So it's just a little assignments that we wanted to do. So provisioning a volume as large as that is quite wasteful, especially considering that with EBS you pay for the amount provisioned and not the amount used. So we need to have all of these things in mind when we are provisioning resources. And you should also make use of reserved and spot instances. Who can tell us what they remember about these two instance pricing models? Maybe you can take one and then tell us what you know about them. Painting. These two pricing models have been
Yeah, because
mentioned in this class. Please explain reserved instances or spot instances.
okay. Reserved instances is a type of instance where the instance is dedicated for you alone. So it has a period of 1 year or 3 years. That is the maximum years you can reserve an instance. So it's either a 1 year or it's a 3 years. You can have a discount of up to 70%, if I'm right. And then the spot instance is the type of instance where applications that can be interrupted mostly used. It is typically more or less like the pay as you go, but they can be interrupted. So if you go for a spot instance, let's say you are doing a test and you go for a spot instance, during the test, AWS can send you a message to tell you that, okay, the spot instance they reserved for you for your test, maybe they need it, so you have to pause the test or something like that, and then continue later sometime. So they take that spot from you. So it's mostly like how should I put this to? It's like someone is borrowing you part of their space to use, and then when they need, they take it back again. So you get another space to use. Yes. So it's mostly for applications, testing, and then things that can mostly be interrupted. Okay. So that's what I would say.
Thank you so much, Bensi. Gifty.
Okay. Plenty have explained both. So I think the only thing I remember is with sports instance, I think it is a bit cheaper than the on-demand one. And yeah, because of that interruption that can happen. So it's cheaper. And then the other one, the reserve, is it 1 to 3 years or 1 or 3 years? I thought it was 1 up to 3 years, right?
No, it's 1 or 3 years.
Or oh, okay. Oh, okay, all right. All right then. Thank you.
You're welcome. Terry.
Yes, I was here.
Yes,
So,
Terry.
but Penti, I said explain only reserve. You want to explain spot too, but I'll add spot. So, spot instance is should I say it's an unused EC2 instance, and it's available. It's available for less than the price that is on demand. Spot instance can they are up to 90% cheaper than the price the instances that are on demand. So it can help to significantly greatly reduce your EC2 cost. And when can you use spot instance? You can use it for various fault tolerant and flexible applications. Yeah, so that's what I know about.
All right. Thank you, Terry. So with the instances that we've been provisioning day in, day out, so right now we've heard about three instance types. You guys have mentioned on demand, you've mentioned reserved, sports. There's also dedicated instances, dedicated hosts, all of those. So with the instance that we provision, if I should go to my EC2 console and I should provision an instance right now, which of the pricing models would I be making use of? Or what is the pricing model that we've been making use of so far in this course? Yakubu.
On demand.
Exactly. So we've been working with on demand. So let's just assume that with on demand, we are paying, let me just call it OD. So with on demand, we are paying $100. So right now, whenever we need an instance, we are going to, when we go to the console and provision an instance now, we're going to be paying $100 per hour. Now, there's something called reserved instances. With reserved instances, you would be able to reserve an instance. So the instance that you're provisioning, it should not be taken from you. So it's going to be your instance for a period of 1 or 3 years. And we know that with AWS, the more you use, the less you pay. So if you're going for 3 years, you know that you'll be getting more discounts as compared to if you just go for 1 year. And there's also another factor that contributes to reserved instances. It's about how much money you pay when you're making the reservation. So you can pay all upfront. You can pay partly upfront, and then you can also pay no upfront. So if it's no upfront, then we know that you would be getting it when like the bill comes at the end of the month. But if you're going with all upfront, you're going to pay all the money for that 1 or 3 years that you've reserved. And if you're going for partial upfront too, you pay part, and then they spread the rest of the cost over some time for you because you're going to be with them for at least 1 or 3 years. So with reserved instances, they are cheaper in the sense that if on demand we are paying $100, then with reserved we can expect to be paying let's say $30. Okay, because you're able to save about 70% when it comes to reserved instances. Now, when it comes to sports instances, these are the cheapest of them all. And what sports instances essentially is that while some instances have unused capacity, so what AWS does is they bring up a bid. Okay, so you can get instances to use for very, very cheap, and you are going to bid on the instance. So let's say they have this an M5 large instance available, and that instance is it's idle and is being auctioned. So all of us would be able to put in bids. So Dennis says, okay, I want it, I'll pay $10 per hour. Yakubu says you pay $15 per hour. Now the person with the highest amount of on the bid, that person is going to be given the instance. If somebody else, so in this example I just gave, is Yakubu that is going to be given the spot instance. If Gifty should come and she says she has $16 per hour, Yakubu has only 2 minutes to pack up whatever stuff he has on the instance, and then it would be given to Gifty to use. That's how sports instances work. And because of how cheap they are, people still go for them because even though, because as compared to on-demand instances, sports instances are really cheap. So if you have batch processing, so you probably have some processing or some compute that you need to do that takes less than 2 minutes, or you have like a lot of it, so you just want to be running them on sports instances. If your workload can withstand interruptions, then you go ahead and then you use spot instances to help you to save money. So it's still a virtual machine that we're provisioning, but looking at these pricing models, you have the power to decide how much you end up paying. Please, do we understand? And
Yeah. I want to find out what pricing model is applied to instances that are provisioned in auto-scaling groups.
on demand.
Okay. So regardless of whether you reserve the instance or you're using a spot instance, once it's in an auto-scaling group, the extra ones that are provisioned will definitely be on demand, and you have to pay the on-demand piece.
Yeah,
Okay. Thank you.
welcome. Yakubu.
Okay, so for the spot instances, what happens to the EBS volume?
You take a snapshot. So you take an AMI snapshot of them before you lose the EBS volume. Or you can
Okay.
also configure it to have the volume stored, but it's cheaper to have a snapshot of the volume so that whenever you get another instance, you just spin up another volume from that instance. But if you want to still have the EBS volume, then you will now be paying for EBS volume provisioned.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Welcome, Johnny Albert.
No,
Yes, John.
so still with the still with the spot instance. So now somebody had come in and bidded and it's having it, whether making a snapshot or whatever. Exactly where are you going to put your data?
It's on the
I'm not getting that.
AMI.
I don't understand that.
Okay, so your snapshot is a screenshot of your data. So it will just be stored as an AMI.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, so okay. I think I get the AMI is a snapshot of the instance as a whole. So your configurations, your what's it called? The OS you are using, all of those things are part of your AMI. But when it comes to your volume, you would take an EBS snapshot, which is this a copy of your data. So you can just keep the snapshot inside of your account. So let me go to
Okay.
EBS. I don't have any snapshots yet, but I think there'll still be provision for those. So you click on volumes. So there's volumes and there's snapshots. So when you come to the place for snapshots, this is where the snapshots would be. So it's just a copy of your data that you can use to spin up a new volume. So this is where your snapshots
Okay.
would be stored.
Okay. Okay. I see.
And
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, your hand is still up.
Oh, my bad. Sorry.
Okay. So you would be able to specify in your launch template. So your auto scaling group, the launch template, you'll be able to specify if you want to use reserved instances or spot instances. But it should be ones that you already have, because it's not, I mean, when it comes to reserved instances, because it's not now that you are going to reserve an instance. So like you reserve an instance for 1 year, and then the auto scaling group senses that you are not having a lot of traffic. Do you get it? So by default, if you don't specify the pricing model you want, it will go with on demand, because we know that with auto scaling groups, when you no longer need the capacity, it will just shut down that instance. So if it should go for something like a reserved instance, then that's going to cost you a lot of money, because there's going to come a time that you are no longer going to need that excess compute, and then you have already committed yourself to paying for it for 1 or 3 years. So that's why the auto scaling group provisions on-demand instances by default, but you can configure that to be different. And if your workload is also can withstand interruptions, then you go for sports instances, which again saves you the most money. Dennis.
Yeah, I would say I came across another concept which was I think reserve host, and I wanted to find out because I don't see it, like mostly when they are talking about pricing models, I don't see it mentioned a lot. So I wanted to see, is it the same as the reserved instance, or is something different?
Did you say reserved host?
Yeah.
I haven't come across reserved hosts. Let's go to the
That
documentation.
one, I think they said that you reserve a whole data center to yourself or something like that.
Okay.
Dedicated, yes, yes, thank you. It's dedicated host.
Oh, okay. Dedicated host.
Mm.
So with dedicated host, you are able to specify the server that you want. So that gets leaves the virtual and gets more into the physical aspects. So you are able to specify the exact hardware that you want to host your EC2 instance. And a use case for this would be when you have compliance requirements. So some companies have that requirements that you should not share hardware with any other businesses, that kind of idea. So they would go for the dedicated hosts, and then it's usually to comply with some licensing agreements. So with dedicated hosts, you have control over the hardware that your instance is being provisioned on. Dennis, is that okay?
Yeah, so does that have like a separate pricing model, or
Yeah, so those ones are really expensive, like way expensive even than the on-demand ones,
okay?
because the whole hardware is dedicated to just you. You don't share.
Okay, because from my understanding, I thought like maybe when it comes to pricing models, every service or everything you want from AWS falls under what we are discussing now. That's the on-demand, spot, reserve, and the savings type.
Yeah, so I think there's about, is it 8 of them? Let me bring up, I think we should be able to see them here. There's about 8 of them. Stance pricing models. So the search button. Let me go back. It's the same. It's the same one. Where would I get this? Okay. Okay, so I think it's in the starter pack. Odun.
Yeah, hello, Akasha. Good morning.
Good morning.
Please, I would want to find out if when you are configuring the auto scaling group, you have the chance to mix the EC2 instances. For example, by default, it's going to choose on demand. So is it possible, let's say you can choose maybe 1 or 2 on demand and then the rest may be sport instances? Is that possible?
Yes, it's possible.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. I think we've done this in the first week. Where are you? Yeah. From here. So when we look at the starter pack that we shared from the first week, I think we did this in the first week. So we can just run through them. So this is the on-demand one that we know about. And it would usually be used for when you have a short-term or unpredictable workload that cannot be interrupted. So it's the on-demand that we have been using so far. And then there's also reserved instances, and you are able to reserve some capacity for 1 or 3 years, and you use it for your predictable workloads. So you have a steady amount of traffic coming in. You might want to use a reserved instance for 1 year, but whenever you get any spikes, and then you go ahead and then probably go for on-demand or sports, because you know that those ones are short-lived. So it's up to you to be able to make those combinations. So you want to use, so it's the same application or it's the same workload, but you use sports instances for some part of it, you use on demand for some part of it, you use Lambda. So it's up to you to combine the services how you see fit. And the standard reserved instances provide up to 75% off when you compare to on-demand pricing. And then we also have sports instances, and with sports instances, you are able to bid for spare EC2 capacity, and you're able to save up to 90%. So the example I was using earlier, if you are paying $100 when it comes to for on-demand per hour, when it comes to sports instance, you can go as low as $10 per hour. So that's the reason people prefer sports instances sometimes. Emmanuel Odun.
Yeah, so Akosia, how fast do you get this sports instances service? Are they made readily available, or it can take longer time? Because I learned you have to make the request.
Yeah, so you go to the EC2 console, and then you go to sports instances, and then you see the ones that are available. So, and then you make your bid. So when you make your bid and you outbid someone, they will take theirs and give to you.
Okay, but what I'm asking is, in the situation where you are using it in auto scaling group, and then let's say, you have to specify your desired number of EC2. So if you say, okay, you want, let's say 2 on demand, and then let's say 2 sport instances. So when it requires that it provisions this sports instance, will it be available for auto scaling group to provision?
It depends on the amount of money that you've mentioned. So if the ASG goes to the sports dashboard, and then there's one available that your price can meet, then it can get it for you. If your price cannot meet it, then it cannot get it for you.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Dennis.
Yeah, so I wanted to first of like I had a question, but I want to speak to Ima's question also. So I think what I learned about the sports instance is that like it looks like something that is not reliable like at all times kind of thing. Like it's sports. So you don't always have access to it. It can be taken from you at any time. That's why it's very cheap, and like you can get it very cheap compared to the other models. So for instance, in his scenario, that if he configures it for a load balancer, maybe what if that time that the load balancer needs to provision that spot instance is not available, AWS is using it? Or are you saying that if his cost is still higher, then he has a chance of having it at all times for himself? Hello.
Hi, Dennis.
Yeah. Please, did you get my submission?
Yes, please, I did. So the ones that are available, if he's able to outbid them, he will have them. But if there's none available, then nothing can be done about it.
Oh, okay. Okay.
No, I thought Dennis wanted to know if, hey, keep quiet. Dennis wanted to know if, let's say you have it now and then nobody, outbids you. Are you going to use it as long as it's in your possession? Or there is a limit to how long you can use it? Or that's how I understood.
So
Yes,
sports instances are you can't predict when it has to be taken away from you. It has to be taken away from you, and you just have 2 minutes left. So you cannot predict how long you can use it for. You can just provision it for as long as you can use it. It's not really up to you. Is that okay?
Okay, yeah, that's
Yeah, I think that's fine.
It means practically you don't have to configure with maybe the auto scaling group, because obviously you're auto scaling for reliability. And so if it's something that you can lose, in terms of maybe you become a cloud engineer, you have to consult someone. I don't think it's a good use case to.
Yeah, so I think a combination would do, but if you have a lot of traffic coming in and then the spot is not available, then that means your auto scaling group will not even be able to get those instances. So your maybe just your reserved instance or your initial on-demand instance that would now be left with the job. So that's true. It's not a good idea to configure spot instances as part of your ASG.
Yeah.
Ellie.
Yes, please, I wanted to ask, since spot instances aren't that reliable because they can easily be taken away on short notice, what is the most optimal use case for going for a spot instance? Because I don't think anyone would provision, unless maybe you are working on a project, you wouldn't want to provision something that can be easily gotten rid of or taken away from you.
Okay, so some data processing jobs, you can use spot instances for them. So I spoke about ETL yesterday. You extract the data from various sources. You need to transform them to be in the correct format. So that's short time that you need to transform them to be in the correct format. You can use a spot instance for that, because just imagine you are retrieving data. Just imagine you are retrieving data from, let's say, Instagram. So all Instagram users you are extracting data from them. So that's like the kind of data you're working with, and you need to transform it to be in what's it called? In the correct format so that you can run analytics on them. So just that transformation, each user's data is could take, let's say, 30 seconds. So each user, I don't know how many users that Instagram has. So let's say 10,000 users or a million users or whatever. So those 30 seconds that is going to take, if it's not going to be a problem, if the transformation is not going to be a problem, you can use spot instances for that, because this is a very large number that we are talking about. And if you just use on-demand instances, you are going to be paying more. So in this sense, it will be used for those short-term processing, but a large number.
Okay.
So as and when sports instances are available, then those transformations happen. As and when, then those transformations happen. You don't use it for those workloads that need to be up and running, like maybe your web server, for instance. You won't use a sports instance for that. Is that okay?
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. And still on the pricing models, we also have dedicated hosts. Penty.
Yes, Akosia, I learned that with the spot instances, it's mostly auctioned by individuals who are having enough space and they feel like they want to give it out for some number of days or months. So the bidding you are talking about is mostly suggested by the customers and not AWS, even though it is AWS that standing as the middleman to do the decisions and everything. But the pricing models is determined by the individuals. How true is that?
So if you're an AWS partner, so through AWS, you want to auction idle resources. So let's say you have reserved instances, but then now they're idle and you already made that commitment and you want to auction those idle resources. You are going through AWS. So as AWS, because for you to be able to make some money through AWS, then you would have to be a partner or go through the marketplace or those things. So AWS is just standing in for you so that you can auction those reserved, those idle resources that you have. So you would specify that, okay, if they give anything $10, then take it. Then that is when the other people who are the sports instance consumers would also come in with their prices. Okay, so from there, then AWS would be able to tell who to give those instances to.
Okay, but if that is the case, then why would they give the spot to another person if the person come and bid higher than the current person using? Because that's what I don't understand. Let's assume Dennis is having an idle resource I want to use, and then Dennis says, "Oh, okay, I like $5." At the end of the day, I've paid the $5 I'm using, and someone brings $10. They quit mine and give it to the $10 person. Why does it happen? Is it that AWS is trying to, not to let people to be okay with the spot instance, or it's just that's how it's supposed to work? Because you said something that if another person bid higher than the current user, there will be a swap over there.
Yeah, so the baseline, so let's say the person says they want $5 for their instance. If they want $5 for their instance, any other amount or any additional amount on that $5 is going to be, let me say, AWS's cut or whatever, because the people are taking their $10. So if there's an instance where that transfer should happen, and bear in mind too that the amount of money that's the person who is now using the sports instance has mentioned, if they should kind of go higher than that, it might not be looking that cheap anymore. But then if there's the need for somebody else to get that instance because the person is bidding like more money, then it goes to the person. But usually the amount of money on the instances, they cut across. So when you go to the what's it called? When you go to the console, even though it's different people auctioning at various prices, there's going to be like a standard amount that you can go with. And then if you bid more than that, the instance is yours.
Okay, thank you. So it's the middleman AWS that is causing the problem. No problem, thank you.
You're welcome. So we also have dedicated hosts, and with dedicated hosts, you are able to specify the physical server that you want to use, and it's suitable for compliance and licensing requirements. So probably you have strict rules to just keep your service in-house, but what you can do is to find the middle ground. So yes, you'll be using AWS, but then the service that you'll be using will just be dedicated to you. So that's like a middle ground between like having your on-prem and then being on the cloud. And this is the most expensive option when it comes to the Python models. And there are also dedicated instances where you are able to virtualize instances on hardware just for you. And you also use physically dedicated EC2 servers. And you do not get as much visibility and control as compared to the dedicated host that we just looked at. So dedicated instances is like, let's say, the middle ground between dedicated hosts and then the normal let's say on demand that we know about. So you would be able to pinpoint the virtualized instances that you want. So dedicated hosts offer you more control and visibility, and it's good for your licensing needs, whereas dedicated instances just provides you the hardware isolation without the need to pinpoint the exact physical server that you want. Do we get the difference between both?
Please come again.
With dedicated hosts, you will be able to pinpoint the exact hardware that you want, and then you also specify that you do not want to share that hardware with anybody else. But when it comes to dedicated instances, you specify the virtualized instances. So this hardware, the instances that are virtualized on that hardware, those are the instances that I want. But with dedicated hosts, you specify the hardware that you want. Is it better? They're really like close, like almost the same thing, except that dedicated instances is the virtualized hardware, whereas dedicated host is like the hardware by itself.
Yeah, that's cool.
Okay. So this is also expensive, but it's cheaper as compared to dedicated hosts. And with this one, you may share hardware with other non-dedicated instances, but with the other one, you do not. And then there's also savings plans. So savings plans is also similar to reserved instances. Yeah, I think it's also 1 or 3 years, but then there's just a little difference between savings plans and reserved instances. So it boils down to the instance family, the size, the operating system, the tenancy, and then the region. So you would be able to with savings plans, you would be able to make you would be able to change the instance family, the size, and then those other things. But with reserved instances, you are limited. I think that's the difference. I'm not so sure. But savings plans, you can also think of savings plans as reserved instances. So let's say you come across a question that is about 1 year period or 3 year period. It would either be savings plans or reserved instances, but the difference lies in how you can change the configurations. So the instance family, the size, the OS, and those things. And we have compute savings plans, which includes EC2, Fargate, and Lambda. And then we also have EC2 savings plans, which applies to specific instance families within a region. So savings plans have more restrictions as compared to reserved instances when it comes to the instance family, the instance size, and then other configurations that you make with respect to the instance. Please, is that okay?
Yes, please.
Yes, please. Oh, I have good news. I was having some challenges with my account because I left some instances running and they've given me back my money. Yay! Thank you, Dennis and Akusia and Ruben.
You're
Bye.
welcome.
That's really good news. We share the money.
Please, the money is
Yes,
not.
yes. Come for 2%. Everybody 2%, 2%.
Hey.
Kwaku family is sending me and you.
What money are you talking about?
NT.
Lenfino. But the
Kwaku
Nisika.
Akufa do krasa wa eshi na minka den minka den.
They are got to bank the beer community. That's what I actually.
Amount 9 million, what's why she? Hey, 20.
Easy.
Okay, so I think we can end the class here for today. When we get back, we would look into designing for cost reduction. And those of us coming for the feedback session, we meet at 11:30. Or do you want us to have it now? Let me mention your names. If you want to have a break and then we meet at 11:30, or you want to have the session now, depends on you.